In a peaceful countryside nestled beneath golden hills, there lived a wealthy and kind-hearted man with 2 sons. His land stretched far beyond the eye could see, vibrant fields swaying in the breeze, flocks of sheep grazing gently, and workers humming as they went about their duties. He was a man of honor, respected by all, and deeply loved by his household. The older son, dutiful and steadfast, worked closely with their father, rising with the sun, overseeing the workers, and caring for the land. But the younger son, he was different. He had dreams beyond the farm, eyes full of wonder, and a restless spirit that often drifted to distant lands. One early morning, as the sky turned lavender and the birds began their songs, the younger son approached his father in the courtyard. With a bold, almost trembling voice, he said, "Father, give me my share of the inheritance. I want to leave and live my own life." The words struck the old man like a sudden wind. His eyes, once serene, now clouded with sorrow. He looked into his son's face, still so young, full of passion and pride. There was silence, deep and heavy, like time itself had paused. The elder brother, who had overheard the request from a distance, clenched his fists. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. To ask for the inheritance while their father still lived, it was a wound to the family's honor. But the father did not raise his voice. He did not argue. Instead, with eyes full of both love and sadness, he nodded gently, and gave the boy what he had asked for. Later that evening, the younger son stood at the gate of their estate, a satchel of coins on his side and excitement flickering in his eyes. He didn't look back, not at the servants who had helped raise him, not at the land he had once played on, not even at the tearful eyes of his father. The gate creaked open, and just like that, he was gone. And so began the journey, not just of distance, but of the heart. A journey of choices, of pride, and of a love that never stopped waiting. The days in the faraway land were bright and bustling. The young man, once sheltered under his father's care, now wandered through unfamiliar streets, his pockets jingling with silver and gold. For the first time, he felt free, or so he thought. He dressed in fine robes, ate exotic meals, and made new friends who laughed loudest when the wine flowed and danced closest when the music played. He bought them gifts, paid for their meals, and surrounded himself with people who praised his every word. To new beginnings. One would cheer. To freedom, another would echo. But deep within, the young man sometimes paused. In the middle of the noise and joy, something felt empty. Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. The coins thinned out. His fine clothes faded, and the gifts stopped coming. One by one, the laughter faded. The tables that were once crowded with friends became bare. And then, without warning, the land was struck by a great famine. Food became scarce, merchants closed their shops. The once colorful streets turned gray. People became strangers to one another, each desperate to survive. The young man knocked on many doors, seeking help, but none would take him in. His friends, those who had once danced beside him, turned their faces away. He wandered hungry, broken, and tired. Finally, a local farmer took pity and offered him a job, tending pigs. He, a nobleman's son, now crouched in mud, feeding swine. The smell clung to him, his once soft hands, now cracked and rough. As he tossed husks into the trough, his stomach growled, even the pig's food looked tempting. He sat alone one evening, back against a wooden fence, watching the pigs snort and grunt in the filth. Tears welled in his eyes. His thoughts drifted back home, to warm bread, gentle hands, and his father's voice. "Even the servants in my father's house eat better than this," he whispered to himself. "I will return, not as a son, but as a servant." And just like that, the first spark of humility lit his heart. The prodigal son rose to his feet, filthy, hungry, ashamed but determined. A new journey was about to begin. Not to riches, not to freedom, but to grace. The road home would be long. But this time, his steps were guided not by pride, but by repentance. He began the long journey home. The road stretched ahead, dry and winding, cutting through the hills and valleys of the countryside. Each step kicked up dust, but his thoughts moved faster than his legs. What will I say? Will he turn me away? Memories came like waves: his father's laughter, the smell of bread baking at home, his brother chasing goats through the olive grove. His throat tightened. What if that life is truly gone? Suddenly, a sharp wind cut across the path, and he stumbled, exhausted. A kind old shepherd spotted him from afar, noticing the boy collapse on the trail. The shepherd approached, offered a flask of water and a bit of dry bread. No words were exchanged, just a knowing look and a nod grace in passing. As the young man sat beneath a fig tree that evening, nibbling what remained of the bread, he rehearsed his words aloud. "Father, I have sinned. I'm no longer worthy, make me as one of your servants." He sighed, unsure if he could even look his father in the eye. But still, he continued walking. The young man's heart beat with a mix of shame and hope. Dust clung to his tattered clothes as he trudged barefoot through the winding paths, each step a reminder of the distance he had fallen and the home he longed to return to. His once bright eyes were dimmed by hunger, his cheeks hollow from the long days of despair. But today, he walked toward something more. The early morning sun rose behind him, casting long shadows across the rugged trail. The path home was not easy. Rocks bruised his feet, and the dry wind whispered doubts into his ear. "Will my father accept me?" he thought. "Will I even be allowed past the gate?" Still, he pressed on. As the day warmed, he stared at his reflection, gaunt, weathered, but underneath, a glimmer of the boy he used to be. Along the way, distant fields came into view. The scent of tilled earth and grazing animals filled the air. It reminded him of home. The rhythm of life continued, even while he was gone. It stirred something deep in him, a longing not just for food or shelter but for restoration. A gentle breeze carried the sound of shepherds singing in the distance. The music pierced him, memories flooding in of joyful harvest dances, of laughter with his brother, of evenings beside his father at the fire. He wiped a tear with the sleeve of his robe. As he crested a final hill, the valley below opened wide green pastures, winding vineyards, and the familiar clay rooftops of his village. His breath caught. There it was. His home, so close, yet he felt frozen. What if he had gone too far? What if he had broken his father's heart beyond repair? But something pushed him forward, a whisper in his soul. "Go. You are still his son." He rehearsed his words over and over. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." The words ached on his tongue, but they were true. And they were all he had. The road narrowed. His father's estate was now in sight, worn walls, broad gates, and the sprawling fig trees by the side. He stopped. One deep breath, then another, and with trembling legs, he walked. But what he didn't know was that someone had been waiting, watching, hoping, and at the edge of the fields, an old man lifted his eyes toward the horizon and saw a shadow slowly approaching from afar. The sun hovered low in the sky as the young man took his final steps toward home. His heart pounded not from exhaustion, but anticipation. Around him, familiar sights flickered to life. The old olive press, the fig trees near the boundary wall, even the well where he and his brother once played. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. But what he didn't know was that his father had been watching. Not just that day, but every day. The old man often stood by the gate at sunrise, scanning the horizon. Servants whispered behind him. They thought him foolish, holding out for a boy who likely perished long ago. But he believed. Every morning, he hoped. Every evening, he sighed in disappointment, but never gave up. And then, on this day, he saw something. A figure, small, limping, dusty, making its way down the road. The father squinted. Could it be? His heart leapt in his chest, and before reason could speak, he was running. Robe fluttering, sandals thudding against the dirt, tears already brimming. The young man looked up, confused. Who was this running toward him? It couldn't be, "Father," he whispered. Before he could say more, the man embraced him tightly, arms that once taught him how to walk now pulling him in like a child again. The son tried to speak, the words he rehearsed trembling on his lips. "I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm not worthy." But the father wouldn't let him finish. He shouted with joy, calling to his servants who ran out from the house. "Quick, bring the best robe. Put a ring on his hand, sandals on his feet." Tears ran down the boy's face. He came home expecting rejection, but found arms wide open. And even as the servants dressed him in fresh robes and placed the ring on his hand, the father's voice rang out once more, louder this time, filled with laughter. "Prepare the fattened calf. Tonight we celebrate, for my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and now is found." Joy erupted across the compound. Laughter, music, dancing sounds the young man never thought he'd hear again. But just beyond the walls, another figure stood still. His older brother, watching, and his heart did not leap. The celebration carried on into the starry evening, music and laughter filling the once quiet homestead. Inside the joyful gathering, the father's face was bright with pride, his heart overwhelmed with gratitude for his son's return. The young man, once broken and lost, now sat clothed in honor, surrounded by the familiar warmth of family. But beyond the joyful lights, under the silent shadows of a tall olive tree, stood the elder brother. His arms were crossed tightly across his chest, his brow furrowed, and his eyes narrowed with hurt and disbelief. From his distance, he watched the servants hurry back and forth, watched the dancing, the feasting, and the rejoicing, all for the one who had abandoned them. Bitterness rose like a tide within him. He had labored day after day, faithfully by his father's side. He had never disrespected his home, never wasted a single coin. Yet, here he stood forgotten, uncelebrated while the prodigal was given a hero's welcome. One of the servants noticed him and hurried over, smiling brightly, urging him to come inside. But he shook his head stubbornly, stepping even farther into the shadows. Not long after, his father, still in his festive robes, came out himself, his smile gentle, his arms open wide. The elder son turned toward him sharply, voice trembling with hurt. "All these years I have served you faithfully. I never disobeyed you. Yet you never threw me even a small feast to celebrate with my friends. But now, this son of yours returns after squandering everything and you kill the fattened calf for him." The father's face softened, full of deep love and patience. He stepped closer, placing a hand on his oldest son's shoulder. "My son," he said warmly, "you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. But it is right that we celebrate, for your brother was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and now is found." The elder son's stern face began to soften. In his heart, pride and jealousy battled against love and forgiveness. In the background, the music swelled once more, and the laughter of the household echoed into the starlit night, a night that promised healing, reunion, and hope. The choice was now before him, to remain outside, clinging to resentment, or to step into the celebration of restoration.